Celestial Forge, Chapter 3, First Fight. After another terminally early run, I spent the next morning wearing out my shoes and stressing my bank account in an attempt to track down as many regions as I could. I would have described the success of the entire venture as mixed. While I could use any item that technically met the description of the region, the quality of what was used significantly affected the efficiency of the materials. For instance, I could use tap water for any formula that called for water as a reagent, but purified water without chemical additives required much less. If I used distilled water, I only needed a fraction of the volume. Considering the quality I would need to carry, I grabbed a couple of jugs of distilled water from a pharmacy. Ethanol was going to be difficult to track down. I could, in theory, use something like vodka, but with that concentration and the impurities present, I'd be using insane quantities for each formula. Something like Everclear would do the trick, but it was illegal in New Hampshire. Without ethanol, I was losing access to my strongest healing formula, one of my most powerful blasts. I could work around it and had enough other options that it wasn't crippling. It was still disheartening to run into that obstacle. Of course, I could always order it or pick it up from a specialty store or chemical supplier. Then I would end up on all the tinker lists. Also, I was pushing things as much as I could as far as cost was concerned. I didn't have the budget for special orders. A bit of research and a trip to a garden supply store got me a bag of sulfur that would cover enough of my fire formulas to burn down half the city. I stopped by a gas station on the way back and picked up a couple of bottles of motor oil. After that, I went straight to the largest grocery store I could find. Grease and vinegar were easy to find in the volume and quantity I needed. I only had one formula that called for mushrooms, so a single carton would hold me for the foreseeable future. I dug through their entire pepper selection but couldn't find anything that would work with my formula. The produce section did have a lot of roots that would do for my assortment of healing formula, though it wasn't quite as simple as just rating the root vegetables. It would have been great if I could just buy a bag of baby carrots and call it a day. There was a quality requirement that was kind of aggressive with this region. The ginger worked best, but there were some other options amongst the less common produce that would also do the trick. I was able to stock up, but not for the rock bottom price I'd been hoping for. The butcher counter was able to get me excellent beef bones properly cleaned and everything. I'd have to break them down to formula size, but otherwise it was a perfect source. Craft stores turned out to be a godsend for the more obscure regions. They had clay and spades, though I had to spring for the natural stuff rather than the more processed modeling clay. A huge selection of feathers was stocked, which was good considering I needed a specific type and quality for my alchemy. Wax was as simple as finding the cheapest candles in the store. It would take some processing, but nothing too labor-intensive. They even had a collection of quartz that could function perfectly for a formula that called for crystal. The last store I checked even had bags of acorns for sale. Seriously, God bless crazy craft people. Last two regions I needed to track down were limestone and ash. Fortunately, a carrier at one of the craft stores was able to direct me to an even more obscure supply store that had bags for sale for the purpose of soap making. I picked up a sack of wood ash that would keep me for months. Limestone would be tricky. I can't just buy it off the shelf, but a single good-sized chunk would cover me for ages. It was part of my best defensive formula, so I didn't want to abandon it, but I didn't have a decent source. I decided to sort it out another day considering I made more than decent progress. 15 out of 22 wasn't bad, especially considering 2 of those didn't exist, and 2 more were highly obscure. Ah yes, meteorite and dry ice. The combination will let me synthesize a coal bead. That thing was pretty much the philosopher's stone for this system of alchemy. It let you call on the supernatural power of other people. In theory, I would be able to access the power of other capes with them. It would be incredible if I could pull it off, but the procedure for making the concoction was esoteric, and the ingredients for the formula weren't easy to come by. I had also given up on gunpowder at this point. I could combine it with grease for my strongest attack formula, but I didn't want the hassle of trying to acquire some without any background in firearms or explosives. That was just asking for a visit from the police. If I was going to go on my first patrol tonight, I needed to address the pressing problem of how the hell I was going to carry all the reagents I needed for my alchemy to function. There were 24 formulas I could mix with my current materials. Without a better way of organizing things, I'd be lucky to be able to have 9 ready to go in the field. Thus, the second half of the day was spent hunting through thrift and army supply stores for an effective way of managing 15 different reagents, which had to be grouped into clusters for my available formula. Not every one of my formulas needed to be on hand, and frankly, for most of the dark alchemy, I would need to be in a seriously bad spot to break it out. It was a horrifying mix of acid, decay, force, lightning, 5 flavors of fire, and for some reason, I can promise you made perfect sense. If it seemed insane, a summoned swarm of bees. None of those were anything close to non-lethal. I was still going to keep them ready, but they wouldn't be my quick draw options. That's where I'm going to have to stop for now. But there's Chapter 3 of Brockton's Celestial Forge by Lord Roustabout. Thank you for listening.